Like what I talked about in the last video, lately on YouTube I've been seeing a lot of gaming PC builds that in my opinion are just pitiful, with the price ranging from budgets of $600, $800 and even $1,000. It's not worth it, because there are cheaper options with similar performance, but I particularly want to talk about this build from TechSource. It's $1,000, has an RTX 3070 i5 12400 16 gigs of DDR4 RAM. Pretty good specs to the untrained eye. Why go for a DDR5 ready CPU when you're going to remain on a full set DDR4 platform? In my opinion, the Ryzen 5 5600 would have been a much better option, and even at the time of his build, it was much cheaper while offering very similar performance. Besides, even if you're going to upgrade to a DDR5 motherboard and a DDR5 RAM, I highly doubt you're not going to change the i5 12400 for Intel 13 Gen. Well, as for the 3070, that was a pretty good choice. It was only $500, pretty suitable for a new RTX 3070. But the RX 6800 XT is and was going for around the same price even at the time and before the time of his build. So now at the end of this video, I'm going to rebuild his gaming PC, and I'm still going to compare his $1,000 build versus what I'll be building in this video. First up, the video card. We'll be going with the RX 6750 XT from my last video. That build was really good, really educational, and that PC had crazy price to performance. I'll put a link to that video in the description. But the difference is this time we'll be going with X3 version, which comes in at $430, which is crazy for the usually overpriced variant of the 6750 XT. The 6750 XT has 12 gigs of GDDR6 VRAM, a GPU core clock of 1800 MHz. It's a 7nm GPU. It's PCIe 4x16, that means it delivers a lot more bandwidth against cards with PCIe 4x8. This GPU is the meta right now for mid-range builds. It's most certainly much better option than the 6700 XT and the RTX 3070. And don't get me started on the A770. Well, as for the CPU, I'll also be going with the i5 12400F. But way before those keyboard warriors get typing, the reason why I'm doing this is because unlike TechSource, I'm going with a Z690 motherboard and DDR5 RAM. Hopefully this video teaches TechSource how to build a real DDR5 $1,000 gaming PC. Now for the motherboard. As I said, I went with the Z690 motherboard, specifically the Gigabyte Z690 Elite AX motherboard. It's rocking the ATX form factor. It supports PCIe Gen 5. It has 4 M.2 slots and 4 DIMM slots, and the overall aesthetic of this motherboard is just amazing. For me, this is the #1 Z690 motherboard out there. And by the way, Amazon is having this amazing sale that's offering the Gigabyte Z690 motherboard for just $249. That's pretty epic. But if this does run out of stock, you can always buy the Asus Prime Z690 motherboard. It's always available and almost never out of stock on Amazon and anywhere. Now, like I said, I went with DDR5 RAM, but I'm sure none of you expected DDR5 RAM to be this cheap. For $85, you can get a DDR5 for the 800 MHz 16GB kit on Micro Center. But I know a lot of you might not trust Micro Center for whatever reason, but I think Micro Center has proven themselves to be selling legit PC parts. You can always buy DDR5 RAM on Amazon. It might be more expensive or it might be cheaper. Now for power supply, Avis Game 650 watts 80 plus bones power supply is perfect for this build, and it's $52. Avis Game is such a trusted company because you always know you're going to get the best bang for your buck, and TechSource did use this very same power supply, and I have to give him credit for that. As for storage, I didn't want to go with the 500GB M.2 SSD because I'm technically trying to top TechSource build, so I went with the crucial P5 Plus 1TB M.2 NVMe SSD, which is the same amount of storage that TechSource went with, but I basically tripled his reads and writes speeds, which is a very important factor for productivity and especially gaming. Now housing all these parts is the Corsair 4000D Airflow ATX main tower PC case. It has 3 120mm black fans pre-installed. It supports ATX micro, ATX and ITX motherboards. It also has a good cable management options, and the reasons why I went with this case is because it's a full black airflow case, and you can side mount the GPU, and you can also put up to 10 case fans, which is just insane, and it has a lot of water cooling potentials. And yes, I'm sorry, this has no RGB fans. Like from the thumbnail, now there isn't a lot of money left, so we just had to throw in any CPU cooler that won't break the bank, and the Thermaltake Peerless CPU cooler is just fine. And plus it has RGB, so it will give a little life to all this black build. Now with all the parts mentioned, this is what the final parts list is looking like. And yes, this isn't $1,000, it's even $1,100. And I have to make you guys understand that there just wasn't enough budget left for an AIO cooler and cable extensions. But if you bump that budget up to $1,200, then surely you should be able to get both the AIO cooler and the cable extensions. Now with all that out of the way, let's see its performance in the 10-game benchmark.
Enemy down.
Attention inhabitants of Concepcion. This is a reminder that curfews are established by your government.
Enemy down.
I did go considerable over what Tech Source spent on his build, but you gotta understand that I got much more suitable parts. Now for the part you all have been waiting for, the rebuild of the not so good Tech Source gaming PC, and the comparison of the old one to my build. I rebuilt his build with more suitable parts, and I believe this is to be a much better price to performance gaming PC than what he built. Here are some benchmarks. As you can see, the 6800 XC destroys RTX 3070. And now I'm gonna compare his $1,000 gaming PC versus my own $1,000 gaming PC. And I don't want you guys to expect any generational leaps in performance, because at the end of the day, the graphics cards are pretty much the same, and we both use the i5 12400F. But what makes my build the real deal is the upgrade part. You can upgrade to something like the 13900K and add 2 more sticks of RAMs. And by the way, if Tech Source does comment, I'll pin his comment so we can know what he thinks. But that's all for today. So if you like this video, please consider liking and subscribing. And if you do, make sure to turn on that notification bell so you never miss out on any content like this.